Hi, my name's Skylar Stasney, and I'm the Curator of Copshaholm here at the History Museum, and welcome to Curiosities of Copshaholm. We're in a little bit different of a spot in the mansion today that not many people get to see. It's the basement. This particular room is the canning room. Canning was done to preserve different food items, mostly fruits, vegetables, and sometimes meats depending on the canning method. So in 1809, the canning process was invented by a man named Nicolas Appert in France to be used by the Army and the Navy. So he used jars or bottles and would seal them and then heat them up to a certain temperature so that way they would be preserved. What he didn't know at the time was that he was killing all the microbial bacteria in it, and that's why it ended up preserving the food so that it could be shipped across seas for the Army and the Navy. And then in 1810, a man named Peter Durand out of the UK, it actually started using the tin can process. So he developed that for the Royal Navy so that way they could ship all of those things even more quickly. And once these canning methods made it to the US actually became the world leader in producing canned foods to stay on shelves for much longer. So during the same time that the US was becoming the world leader in automated canning and using the tin can process, there were also jars that were developed that have a hinge and a rubber seal and that were used during the Civil War. So they look just like this. And this is an Atlas jar. That's another jar company other than some of the more popular ones that we know. So to take off the jar lid, you would take this off, kind of like this, and there would be a rubber ring that would go inside of it. And so you would have these little rubber rings in a box like this, and this one, they'd look like this, and so they could be replaceable, so that way you could reuse the jars over and over. So by 1858, John Mason invented the Mason jar. So he was able to invent a screw top lid that had that rubber ring inside of it, and a thread type of lid so that it could actually screw on. So just like these jars right here, you would unscrew this lid, and not in this lid, unfortunately, but in some of these smaller lids that we have, if I can get a hold of it good, you can actually see the rubber ring that is attached to the lid. So this made these jars even more reusable and you didn't have to buy new rings as often. And then by the late 1800s is when you get the Ball jar invented by the Ball brothers. So we have a lot of Ball brothers jars down here in the canning room that the Olivers would have often used. And so with the Ball brothers, they started buying up a lot of smaller companies, and so they actually became the leaders in this industry because of that. And during this time, this is when canning started to become more popular. So like I said, the Olivers would have probably used these quite frequently because home canning was done by more wealthier residents. And then at the start of World War I, that's when this became increasingly popular. So there were lots of victory gardens, which the Oliver Chilled Plow Works actually had one of those during World War I, or communal canning centers where people could actually take their fresh produce to be canned and take it home with them. And so with the Olivers, they actually had their own vegetable garden here on their property, and so they probably would have often canned their own foods right here in this room. So the reason for all of the many glass jars that are in this cabinet behind me as well as in some of the other ones in this room is because using glass jars was encouraged over tin cans because of them being more reusable. The tin cans you would have to throw away and you wouldn't be able to use them again if you wanted to can more of your stuff. And home canning ultimately was really good for people's diets, and it helped save in costs. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do canning. So you either can take the jars and boil them in a water bath, and that kills all the bacteria in there. Or you can do another method called pressure canning, where you actually stick it into a high pressure cooker, and that will kill the bacteria in there as well. The pressure canning method actually used a higher temperature and would kill more of the bacteria than the water bath method. And so pressure canning can be used to can meats and vegetables or other poultry that you wouldn't be able to do with the water bath method. So by canning all of your foods, people were able to take their own harvests and use them instead, and so that way they took pressure off of other industries, especially during World War I and World War II. So eventually home canning died out just because the mass-produced goods got better and they were also cheaper than canning things at home. And so people decided that this wasn't worth as much of the effort anymore since they had it so readily available to them. There's definitely people that still do canning in their own homes, but most people decided to opt for the industrial mass-produced version instead. Thank you for joining me for Curiosities of Copshaholm today. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.